Imagine how good it would feel to be able to speak to someone and make them actually feel good about the conversation, to make them feel better after speaking to you. I think that is powerful. And if you want to be successful in life, you should be able to do that. And if you learn the principles from this legendary book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, you can make it happen. So I promise you that if you have the discipline to watch this entire video from start to finish, you will be able to do just that. That is my promise for you today, and knights don't break promises. This book was written in 1937, and the reason this book is so relevant even to this day is because Dale Carnegie constantly worked on revising it. He revised it until the day of his death, which was in 1955, and many people after him revised it as well. So this book has literally lifetimes worth of knowledge. Carnegie also highlights 8 things this book is going to help you with. 1. Get out of a mental rut. Think new thoughts, acquire new visions, and discover new ambitions. 2. Make friends quickly and easily. 3. Increase your popularity. 4. Win people to your way of thinking. 5. Increase your influence, your prestige, and your ability to get things done. 6. Handle complaints, avoid arguments, and keep your human contact smooth and pleasant. 7. Become a better speaker and a more entertaining conversationalist. 8. Arouse enthusiasm among your associates. And this book has done so for more than 10 million readers. And if you follow this 6-part course, you will be able to join this group. Principle 1. Never criticize, condemn, or complain. Any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do. But it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. A great man shows his greatness by the way he treats little men. In this book, Carnegie talks a lot about Abraham Lincoln's life. Lincoln had many reasons he could criticize people, but he never did. He said, "Don't criticize them. They are just what we would be under similar circumstances." And that is something I want you to think about, because if you live the same life as the person you want to criticize, there is a very high chance you would be exactly like them. And so you shouldn't criticize someone for something you would do if you were exactly in the same situation. This principle will probably be hard to implement, because for most of us, negativity is our default state. And so you will actually have to use willpower and discipline to be able to understand why the person did what he did, and don't criticize him for it. Following this principle will help you become a more kind person over time. Principle 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. We nourish the bodies of our children, friends, and employees, but how often do we nourish their self-esteem? We often forget to give our loved ones genuine praise because we only think about their physical needs. And yet, most people crave genuine and sincere appreciation even more than anything else. In this principle, Carnegie talks about Charles Schwab, president of the United States Steel Company in 1981, who said, "I have yet to find a person, however great or exalted in his station, who did not do better work and put forth greater effort under the spirit of approval than he would do under the spirit of criticism." The reason people do things is because they want to be appreciated for them. It's as simple as that. Now you might think, well, no, it's because they want to get money for them. And while that is true, why do you think they want the money? Because they want to be appreciated for it. They want to be appreciated by their family for bringing food on the table. They want to be appreciated by their friends for having nice clothes, and so on. The point I'm trying to make is that people crave appreciation for what they do, and so you should try your best on a day-to-day basis to give it to them. But make sure you stay away from flattery. Flattery is insincere appreciation, and people can sense that. So be genuine and start being more grateful for others. Principle 3. Arouse in the other person an eager want. Before you go about telling someone what to do, always pause and ask yourself, how can I make this person want to do it? Carnegie mentions a quote from Henry Ford saying, "If there is one secret to success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own." You should not tell someone to do something if you know that if you were in their situation, you wouldn't do it either. Always try to put yourself in the other person's shoes and think about what they want and what they would agree to. Dale Carnegie tells us a story about what a member of his course did when his child didn't want to go to kindergarten. He and his wife started finger painting in the kitchen and having fun. And so soon the little boy started watching them paint and wanted to join in. But they told him that he first needs to go to kindergarten to learn how to do it before they let him paint with them. And just like that, the boy wanted to go to kindergarten now. They didn't try to force him to go. They just showed him all the fun he would have there. And that is the whole art of influencing people. Highlight the benefits they will get if they do what you say. If you do this, they will not only be happier to do it, but they will also do it much better because they are excited about it. Whereas if you gave them a command, they might do it, but it will be done poorly. It will be done for the sake of it being done, and that is not good. Principle 4. Become genuinely interested in other people. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to make other people interested in you. People are always more interested in themselves than anything else. That is something I need you to keep in mind. Every time you talk to someone, the topic they will be most enthusiastic about is themselves. So start talking about them, become genuinely interested in them, and perhaps you'll even learn something. There is a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson: "In my walks, every man I meet is my superior in some way, and that I learn from him." And so keep in mind that everyone you meet always has some sort of interesting story or something you could learn from. Principle 5. Smile. Happiness doesn't depend on outer conditions. It depends on inner conditions. It isn't what you have, who you are, where you are, or what you are doing that makes you happy or unhappy. It is what you think about it. You can become happier by doing things a happy person does. You become genuinely happier if you force yourself to smile. Try it right now, bro. Just force yourself to smile, and I promise you will be happier after. I know you don't believe me, and you still think it is cool to be a cold Sigma male lone wolf whatever, but to be honest, bro, you just look autistic. Being a warm person will do much better for you, and the best way to become a warmer person is to smile as much as possible, because when you smile, you become happier, and that reflects on your body language, your voice, and many other things. Principle 6. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. The average person is more interested in his or her own name than all the other names put together. Remember that name and call it easily, and you have paid a subtle and very effective compliment. In the modern day, mentioning one's name during a conversation feels a little bit awkward when you first start, just because nowadays, most people don't do this. But once you get over it, it will start feeling more and more natural, and since nowadays most people don't do this, you will be viewed like a diamond in a rough. You will be unique, but in a good way. If you implement this principle, you will be able to create more of a connection with the people around you. And now you may be thinking, okay, that sounds nice, but how do I actually remember names more effectively? And the truth is, there is no actual secret to it. The reason most people don't remember names is simply because they just don't put in the effort to learn them. So every time you meet a new person, consciously focus on remembering their name. Principle 7. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. If you want to be a good conversationalist, be a good listener. To be interesting, be interested. If you simply ask interesting questions that encourage the other person to speak, you will be better at holding a conversation than 99% of the world. The more you let the other person speak, the more enjoyable the conversation will be. The best conversationalists in the world speak only about 10% of the time. So start asking interesting questions and let the other person speak. Principle 8. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. The royal road to a person's heart is to talk about the things he or she treasures most. Carnegie talks about how guests in Theodore Roosevelt's house always left impressed with how much he knows about their topic of interest. And Roosevelt revealed his secret to being able to do this. The night before his guests arrived, he would always stay up late learning about their topic of interest. Podcasters do this very well. They always research as much as they can about the person they are going to interview so that they can ask them questions that would make them shine. The podcaster Chris Williamson does this very well. If you ever listen to his podcast, you probably know what I am talking about. And so before you go and speak to anyone, for example, before a job interview, always learn as much as possible about the company so that they will be able to see that you put in the effort. Principle 9. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. The most important rule of life is to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Carnegie tells a story of a French restaurant owner who made his employee retract her resignation by just telling her how important she is to the company in front of all the staff. You need to realize that every person you meet wants to feel important, and if you really think about it, everyone is important. Almost everyone has an important role in society, so make it known to them that you acknowledge their importance. This acknowledgement has to be truthful, otherwise the person will notice and they will start disliking you. So start genuinely showing that you acknowledge the other person's importance. Principle 10. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. A man convinced against his will is off the same opinion still. In this principle, Carnegie talks about how you can never truly win an argument. You might be able to defeat all of the other person's arguments, but that will only make him feel inferior and make him despise you. You've hurt his pride, and he is now even more convinced that he is right. Arguing is addicting, and that's why most people still do it. But when you think about it, it won't even get you what you wanted in the first place. The whole reason you started the argument was because you wanted to change the other person's mind. And arguing never does that. The more you argue, the more the other person argues against it, and the more he argues against it, the more he solidifies his current belief. 9 times out of 10 after the argument, both people walk away thinking they are absolutely right. So remember that you can never truly win an argument, and there are other ways you can win people to your way of thinking, and there are other ways to win people over to your way of thinking. Principle 11. Show respect for the other person's opinion. Never tell people they are wrong. If you can be sure of being right at least 55% of the time, you can go into Wall Street and make $1 million a day. If you can't be sure of being right even 55% of the time, why should you tell people they are wrong? If someone makes a statement that you know is definitely wrong, you should not say that to him. That will only make him upset, and just convince him more of his previous opinion. Rather than doing this, you should ask him questions that will make him come to the realization himself. Carnegie gives us the exact sentence we can use to convince someone that what he said was wrong. I thought otherwise, but I may be wrong, and I frequently am. And if I'm wrong, I want to be put right. Let's examine the facts. Saying this sentence will stop a lot of arguments from happening. And that is good because, as we just learned from part 2 in Principle 10, you can never truly win an argument. So if you use this principle, you will stop yourself from going into the rabbit hole of never-ending arguments. Principle 12. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Say about yourself all of the derogatory things you know the other person wants to say, and say them before the other person has a chance to say them. The chances are 100 to 1 that a forgiving attitude will be taken and your mistakes will be minimized. Now, when implementing this principle, a lot of people make it weird. They are too self-deprecating, and they apologize for things that aren't actually their fault. You should only do this when you actually make some sort of a mistake. Carnegie tells us a story where he himself has experienced this. He used to take his dog on a walk without a leash and a muzzle, even though a police officer told him previously that it was against the law. And one day he got caught, and it was the same police officer who told him that it was not allowed. And so before the officer could say anything, Carnegie used this principle. He admitted everything he's done wrong and sincerely apologized. And so the officer took the softer approach and let Carnegie go without any further punishment. So whenever you do something wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. In a situation like this, there can only be one angry person, and if you take on that role, you can very often minimize the consequences. Principle 13. Begin in a friendly way. The friendly approach and appreciation can make people change their minds more readily than all the bluster and storming in the world. Carnegie tells the story of how one of his course members got his rent reduced by using this tactic. Instead of complaining like all the other tenants, he took a different approach, and when talking to his landlord, he started talking about how great the apartment he is staying in is. He told him how much he liked the furniture, how he likes that everything works the way it's supposed to, and complimented him on how well he runs the building, but also said that he would love to stay there, but he just cannot afford the rent. And just like that, without even having to ask for it, the landlord reduced his rent. This story is very nice and can be applied by most of us at home. So next time you have a reason to complain, consider starting with a compliment, because that will always get you further than being angry. Principle 14. Get the other person to say yes immediately. The more yeses we can induce, the more likely we are to succeed in capturing attention for our ultimate proposal. In this principle, Carnegie talks about Socrates and his way of winning debates. He would ask his opponent questions that he knew he would have to say yes to, winning one argument after the other. At the end, his opponent usually ended up agreeing with him. When you get someone to say yes, it puts them in a very forward mood and makes them more likely to agree with your next question. And so the more yeses we can get the other person to say, the more likely they are gonna agree with our final statement. This principle of getting people to say yes immediately is most often used in sales. The best salesmen out there don't try to sell anything. They only ask you smart questions which, if you answer, you convince yourself to buy the product they are trying to sell to you. So for example, if I wanted to sell someone my gym membership, depending on what type of person it is, I would ask them a question I knew was in line with their desire. So for example, for an older person, I would ask if they think staying fit is necessary for living a longer life. I wouldn't ask that to a 15-year-old. I would ask him if he thinks that getting jacked will make him more attractive. And obviously, both would have to say yes. Then for example, I could ask if they ever tried getting into working out to get fit. And again, most people have to say yes to that. That is another yes I got. Then I could ask if the reason they didn't stay consistent with working out was because they were doing it alone and no one held them accountable. And most people would have to say yes to that. So then I could offer them some sort of a package with a fitness trainer that would hold them accountable. And at the same time, obviously sell a membership. And you can use this principle for almost anything. You just have to use some creativity. Principle Principle 15, let the other person do a great deal of talking. Most people trying to win others over to their way of thinking do too much talking themselves. Let the other people talk themselves out. Here, Carnegie tells us a story about a mother whose relationship with her teenage daughter wasn't going well. No amount of lecturing, punishing, or nagging would stop her from misbehaving. So one day, she simply asked her daughter why. Why was she behaving like this? And later, she realized that the reason she was behaving like this was because she was never allowed to speak. When she would come to the mother with some thoughts and ideas, she would get interrupted and given more orders. And once the mother realized this and started to let her speak, their relationship improved immeasurably. It's easier and more comfortable to keep talking, but that's not a good thing. People who are confident in themselves don't have to fill in the blanks during a conversation. That is something I want you to remember. There is also one very dangerous habit you might encounter as you start implementing this principle, and that is interrupting them while they are talking. When you interrupt someone while they are saying something, they won't even listen to you because they still have a bunch of their own ideas that are crying for attention they want to talk about. So they don't even hear what you wanted to say in the first place, and you just made them upset. Principle 16. Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. Isn't it bad judgment to try to shove your opinions down the throats of other people? Isn't it wiser to make suggestions and let the other person think out the conclusion? Carnegie talks about Edward M. House, who said, "After I got to know the president, I learned that the best way to convert him to an idea was to casually plant it in his mind, but so as to interest him in it to get him thinking about it." People don't like being told what to do. Remember the times when you were about to do the dishes and your parents told you to do them at the exact same time? Suddenly, you didn't want to do them anymore. When someone orders you to do something, it takes your free will out of the picture, and we as humans really dislike that. And so in order to get someone to do what you want, you have to present your ideas in a way for them to not know what your intentions are. They will only take your idea into account if they reach that point themselves. As Galileo once said, "You cannot teach a man anything, you can only help him find it within himself." Now you may be thinking, well, yeah, but I want to be recognized for my ideas. And this mindset could work when dealing with some people, but most people are very stubborn and won't listen to you if you present it as your idea. So you have to make the decision whether you want the idea to be implemented or be recognized for it. If you are dealing with the right type of person, both things will happen, but in most cases, you have to choose one. Principle 17. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. If the only thing you get from this book is to be able to see things from the other person's angle as well as from your own, it may easily be one of the most important stepping stones of your success. It is a shame that we often don't take the time to step into other people's shoes, because it is often that one simple effort that changes the way our conversations go. If you could simply get yourself to imagine how the other person feels, what he thinks, and what he wants to do, you would be able to influence him to do anything. So whenever you want someone to do something, always take the time to think and see things from their angle as well as from your own. Principle 18. Be sympathetic to the other person's ideas and desires. 3/4 of people are hungering and thirsting for sympathy. Give it to them, and they will love you. Carnegie says, if you live the same life as some of the worst people in history, there is a high chance you would end up doing the same things as them. If we use the previous principle of trying to see things from the other person's angle, it will become easier to be more sympathetic. Carnegie even gives us the exact phrase we can use when it comes to being more sympathetic. I don't blame you one iota for feeling as you do. If I were you, I would undeniably feel the same way. You need to understand that everyone has a reason for what they do, and if you can understand that reason, you can influence them to do anything. Principle 19. Appeal to the nobler motives. The person will think of the real reason for a request themselves, but all of us like to think of motives that sound good, so in order to change people, appeal to their nobler motives. Carnegie tells us the story of how Lord Northcliffe was able to convince news media publishers to stop posting pictures of him he didn't like. He appealed to the respect and love all of us have for motherhood, and so instead of telling the publishers that he doesn't like the picture, he instead wrote them and said, "Please stop using that picture in the newspapers. My mother doesn't like it." Everyone has a noble motive you can appeal to. Most people's nobler motives are selfless. It is usually something that would help the people around them. And so before you go about telling someone what to do, always pause and ask yourself, what nobler motive does this person have that I could appeal to? Principle 20. Dramatize your ideas. These are the days of dramatization. Merely stating the truth isn't enough. The truth has to be vivid, interesting, and dramatic. You have to use showmanship. The movies do it, the television does it, and you will have to do it if you want attention. If you want your idea to be taken seriously and implemented, you cannot just state it. Imagine if my video started with the sentence, "Hello everyone. Today, I am going to talk to you about the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share. That would be boring as fuck, right? No one would watch the video. I have to start with the fast music and immediately hook you with something. I have to make it more dramatic. I could be saying the same things in two videos, but the one that is more dramatized will do much better because that's what people like. So before you go about presenting someone with an idea of yours, always first ask yourself, how can I dramatize this idea? And I promise you, it will be received much better. Principle 21. Throw down a challenge. This is what every successful person loves. The game, the chance for self-expression, the chance to prove his worth, to excel, to win. That is what makes foot races and hog calling. Carnegie tells us another story about Charles Schwab, who doubled the production in his factory by using this principle. After the day shift was done, he came in the factory and wrote a big number 6 on the floor with chalk, which indicated the number of mills the day shift had created. When the night shift came, they were motivated to work harder than the day shift, so they ended up making 7 mills and therefore changed the number to 7. And then the day shift came in, worked really hard, and ended up changing the 7 to a 10. Just like that, Charles Schwab managed to double the amount of work, and all he did was write a number on the floor. Charles Schwab understood that the way to get things done is to stimulate competition, not in a way to compete for money, but in a desire to excel. And the good thing about this is that you can use it in your day-to-day life. Next time you go to the gym, go with a friend and try to see who can lift more and get more reps on an exercise. Doing this one simple thing will make you put in much more effort and therefore help you make more progress. And you can even do this with yourself. If we use the gym example once again, once you start tracking your lifts, you are going to be more motivated to do more, and I think that is powerful. So remember that in order to motivate someone, throw down a challenge. Principle 22. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. Beginning with praise is like a dentist beginning with Novocaine. The patient still gets a drilling, but the Novocaine is pain-killing. Carnegie tells a story of how one of his course members successfully encouraged a new low-performing trainee to increase her work output by using this principle. He started by telling her all the things she was doing well. This made her realize that he had confidence in her. After that, he followed up by suggesting all the things she could improve to make her even better. Beginning with praise is really important, but in order for it to actually work well, you need to implement the next principle. Principle 23. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. Many people begin their criticism with sincere praise, followed by the word but, and ending with a critical statement. You have been working really hard, and we are really proud of you, but if you worked harder, your grades would have been even better. You can probably tell that does not sound good. When someone hears the word but after a praise, they question the validity of it. Instead of this, Carnegie suggests that we replace the word but with the word and. You've been working really hard. We are so proud of you. And if you work even harder next year, your grades will be even better. Carnegie also tells us another story about Charles Schwab, which I really liked. Charles Schwab saw his employees smoking right under a no smoking sign, and he could have come up to them being angry and started shouting at them, like, can you not see the sign or something? But he instead chose to use this principle because he knew that they know they are breaking the rules, and so he called attention to their mistake indirectly. He pulled out his expensive pack of cigars, handed one to each of them and said, I'd appreciate it, boys, if you could smoke these outside. This call to their mistake was indirect, but very effective. They knew what he meant, and he did it in a way that they wouldn't start resenting him. So when you are about to call to someone's mistake, always pause and ask yourself how you can do it in an indirect way. Principle 24. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person. Admitting one's own mistakes, even when one hasn't corrected them, can help convince somebody to change their behavior. Carnegie tells us a story about a father who finds out his son started smoking. The father had been smoking for many years, and he felt like his addiction was impossible to stop. And so instead of shouting at him and being angry, he instead took a different approach, telling his son his own mistake. He told him how when he was about his age, he also started smoking, and now he has a very irritating cough, and it is very hard for him to stop now. And just like that, his son stopped smoking. If the father hadn't taken this approach and given his son a punishment, chances are the boy wouldn't have stopped. Admitting your own mistakes sparks sympathy, and as we already know, people crave sympathy. And so next time, when someone makes a mistake, try thinking about some way where you can relate to him. This will not only make you less angry during the confrontation, but it will also be way more effective when it comes to convincing him not to do it again. There is a high probability that if someone has made a mistake, you have made a mistake very similar to his. Principle 25. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Asking questions not only makes an order more palatable, but it also often stimulates the creativity of the person whom you ask. Carnegie tells us a story about Ian MacDonald, who was the manager of a manufacturing plant and received a very large order which he thought was impossible to complete. And he could have tried to complete it by giving his employees orders and forcing them to work longer in order to complete the work. But he didn't. He instead used this principle and started asking his employees questions like, "Is there anything we can do to handle this order?" And the employees themselves ended up telling the manager to take the order, saying they were willing to work longer hours. And all of this just because he asked questions instead of giving direct orders. When you ask questions, it shifts the dynamic you have with the people you are trying to influence. It takes it from superior talking to inferior, to equals talking to each other. And people like that much more, because as we discussed previously, people don't like being told what to do. Implementing this principle helps you become a better leader. It turns you from a boss to a leader, and that is powerful. Principle 26. Let the other person save face. Even if we are right and the other person is definitely wrong, we only destroy ego by causing someone to lose face. Carnegie tells us a story about two leaders. The first leader was a vice president who always lost his temper and started arguing and shouting at his writer whenever he made a mistake. That employee eventually left and started working for the competitor's company. The other leader was a marketing specialist at a pretty large company, and one of his employees made a significant error that he would have to work longer hours in order to fix. But instead of shouting at him, this boss thanked him for his efforts and told him he was confident that next time it was going to be better. That employee left with his head held high and was very motivated to do better next time. This is a perfect example of this principle in practice. When we let the other person save face by using the previous principles, like for example beginning with praise or calling to people's mistakes indirectly, we are going to be able to let the other person save face and therefore not ruin our relationship with them and also make them put forth greater effort next time. This is much better than just getting angry and embarrassing them. So next time you are about to get angry at someone for a mistake they made, always think about how you can do it and let them save face. When you are in a position of power, it is very tempting to call attention to someone's mistakes directly and embarrass them in front of others. And while this is very tempting, it won't do anything for you. The person you embarrassed will despise you, and all you got from it was a slight feeling of pleasure. Principle 27. Praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. The words of praise can greatly change someone's course of life, for the better or for worse. One genuine praise can butterfly effect itself into tremendous success. Carnegie tells us the story about his friend who was a dog trainer. Carnegie says that he loved watching him train dogs, and one day it made him come to a very important realization. When training a dog, you don't punish him when he does something wrong. You reward him when he does something which was right. You praise him and give him a treat when he does something right. Animal trainers have used this technique for ages, and yet we've never thought to try it out on each other. It is far better to influence someone using meat rather than a whip. A punishment does nothing other than discourage the person and make him not want to do it next time. And so instead of punishing, give honest and sincere praise. Principle 28. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. If you want to improve a person in a certain respect, act as though that particular trait were already one of his or her outstanding characteristics. Dale Carnegie tells us a story about a teacher who managed to get the class who had a reputation of being the worst in the entire school, but later fixed it by using this principle. She came up to the kid who misbehaved the most and complimented him on his leadership skills and told him how she was going to rely on him to help her keep order in the class. She gave him a fine reputation to live up to, and he lived up to it. By telling someone our perception of them, we can very often impact their own view of themselves. When we tell a child that he is smart, he will start getting better grades at school because we impacted his perception of himself, and now he is trying to live up to it by studying harder. When we tell our employee that he always outputs very good work, he will start outputting good work, even if it was bad previously. So whenever you want to influence someone to do better, try this principle and give them a fine reputation to live up to. Principle 29. Use encouragement. Make the fault seem easy to correct. Tell your child, your spouse, or your employee that he or she is stupid or dumb at a certain thing, has no gift in it, and is doing it all wrong, and you have destroyed almost every incentive to try to improve. Use the opposite technique. Be liberal in your encouragement. Make the thing seem easy to do. Let the other person know that you have faith in his ability to do it and that he has an undeveloped flair for it. And then he will practice until the dawn window in order to excel. Carnegie tells us a story about one of his course members who completely changed the life trajectory of his son. He was in a car accident and he had a really big scar on his forehead. At the school, he was already 2 years behind for his age. He was in a special education class and he was really struggling. Specifically, he struggled with math. The calculations were just too hard for him. And so his father started teaching him and made a big deal whenever his son did something right. They celebrated every single improvement, and soon enough, math became easier and easier for him. His grades got much better, and he even improved in other classes. This principle is all about giving the people around us a positive mindset. We want to let them know that anything is possible. They just have to put in some work. So if you are ever in some leadership position, try thinking about this principle and using it. It will do wonders for you. Principle 30. Make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest. In this principle, Carnegie tells us how a course member of his increased his employees' work output by giving them new roles like supervisor of price tag posting. As we learned in the previous principles, giving someone a sense of importance makes them feel much happier and excited about doing the things we want them to do. This principle is kinda like bribing someone. Imagine bribing a police officer. You make the police officer do what you want, which is potentially getting away with a crime by giving him money, which makes him happy. If you want an increased performance from the people you are trying to lead, make them happy to do so. Think to yourself about what's in it for them right now. This is actually a pretty interesting point. Most of the time, the things we try to make others do are forms of delayed gratification, like working hard on something or going to the gym. These are forms of delayed gratification, and they do pay off in the long run. But right now they are uncomfortable and people don't like doing them because it is painful and annoying. So to make them happy to do what we want to do, we might want to offer them some sort of instant gratification. So, for example, as a teacher, you might let your students leave a few minutes earlier so they can get there early for lunch and not have to wait in line. When using this principle, you have to be creative because it can truly make you a really great leader, and that is very needed in the modern day. Alright bro, that's it for today. Go click on the subscribe button, share this video with a friend who needs to improve his social skills. Join the Wisdom Clan with the first link in the description. Make sure you implement everything you've learned today, and bye.